Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for finding time and attending today's webinar organized by the Engineering Accreditation Council. My name is Professor Raj Kumar and I'm the Associate Director for the Manufacturing and Materials Cluster at the Engineering Accreditation Department. Okay, so great. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us during the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, just write to them to the Secretariat. Please also indicate your name and your institution. And the questions and answers session is scheduled to take place after the presentation from the speakers. Yeah, okay. So for the first 30 minutes, we are honored to have Datuk Side, who is the chairman of the Engineering Accreditation Council. He will be talking to us about the overview of EAC standards in the context of international engineering alliances. Okay. Before I pass the session over to him, a brief biodata about him. So he was an electrical engineer, graduated from UMIST, UK, with an MBA from Ohio University, USA. He served with LLN TNB from 1975 and retired as Senior Vice President, Operation and Technical in 2009. So he is currently the chairman of Noor Power Sdn Berhad, an independent power utility in Kulim High Tech, Kedah. He is also currently the BM board member for the session 2020, and as I said earlier, the current EAC chair. In addition to that, he is also the chairman of UMS, University Malaysia Sabah, and chairman for Lembaga Perlesenan Tenaga Atom. Okay, so without wasting our time and so on, I will pass over the session to Dato'. So over to you, Dato'.
Thank you very much, Professor Raj Kumar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan selamat petang pada semua yang hadir. Pertama, saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada penganjur bagi briefing yang akan kita laksanakan pada petang ini bawah tajuk Standard EAC Standard for 2020. Sebelum itu saya mengucapkan mengalu-alukan pertamanya kehadiran, saya tak salah, Deputy Chair for EAC, Professor Nolida, and also semua rakan-rakan saya di ahli Council EAC. Juga saya mengalu-alukan kehadiran semua peserta-peserta yang telah berkesempatan untuk bersama kita melalui talian, perbincangan talian yang telah disusun atur untuk petang ini. Seperti mana yang tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sedia maklum, semalam kita telah menganjurkan majlis yang serupa untuk standard 2020 bagi engineering technologies bawah senior court dan juga engineering technician bawah Dublin Accord. Dan pada petang ini kita akan menganjurkan taklimat bersabit dengan standard 2020 EAC yang telah baru diluluskan oleh Lembaga Pengarah BEM pada tanggal 1/5/2020. Seperti mana yang dinyatakan oleh moderator tadi, saya akan hanya secara selimpas lalu memberi pandangan secara overview the EAC standard in the context of International Engineering Alliance. Saya harap berkata pejabat dapat membantu saya to move to the next slide, please. Okay, I hope the others can see the slide. As we are all aware, Malaysia decided to be a part of the International Engineering Alliance after many consideration given way back in the early 2000 or before 2000. For the reasons that the benefit of being a member of the International Engineering Alliance are significant to us as an engineering body, for it defines the standards of education and professional competencies, As you are well aware, the International Agreement governs the recognitions of engineering education, qualification, and professional competence, thus establishing and enforcing internationally benchmark standards. For the information of participants, to date, as of this April 2020, the total number of in the additional accords are, for Washington Accord, there are 20 members who are full members, with 6 founding members starting in 1989. For Sydney Accord, there are 11 Accord members. And for the Dublin Accord, there are altogether 9 member countries. Besides the Education Accord, there is also the Professional Accord, which is for Apex, and IPEA for engineers, IETA for the engineering technologists, and AIET for the engineering technicians. The abbreviation seems quite similar. Next slide, please. Now, this is just the list of all the signatory members. Under the Washington Accord, there are altogether 20 full members. The last was Peru, ISACID, which was given full membership in 2018, the meeting that we had in Hong Kong. And currently, there are altogether 8 provisional members. And among those provisional members, Malaysia is one of the mentors guiding them towards full membership, i.e. Myanmar, Thailand, as well as at the moment is Myanmar, Thailand, and also Bangladesh. Sorry, Bangladesh is the 3 of them. Yeah, we are the mentors for the 3, and it is quite an honor that many of our senior members has been very much involved in providing mentorship and guidance to these jurisdictions for them to attain their full signatory members. On note also, the list also indicate the current members for Sydney Accord. There are 11, and Malaysia was the last to be admitted in 2018. And there are 2 provisional members, i.e. Peru and Sri Lanka. And for Dublin Accord, which is for the engineering technicians, currently there are 9, and Malaysia is the 9th member admitted in 2018 as a full member. And to date, there is no provisional member yet. Next. This is a journey that we went through. I think for some of you who can recall that the real significant dates under the Washington Accord begins well in the prior to 2000. If you look at 2000, you can see that 2000 was a year we established the establishment of engineering EAC, which comprised of BM, IEM, LAN, and PSD. In 2003, we were, and I was one of the team members that went to Rotorua, New Zealand, for us to submit our application to become a provisional, to attain our provisional signatory status. We were accepted in 2003 to be a provisional member of the Washington Accord. And it was quite a historic moment. I still remember in those days, Tan Sri Zaini led the team together with our Datuk Bakar Chekman, and also the secretary at that time was Dr. Judith, myself, and a few others. And we were there to submit our application for provisional. It took us 6 years until 2009 for many reasons before we were accepted as a full member of Washington Accord. And it was the meeting in Kyoto, Japan in 2009. Of course, subsequent to that, we have established ETAC for Dublin, Sydney and Dublin in 2015. And the most significant milestone for us was in 2016 when we were subject for review. And we passed with flying colors, I must say. And we were given the full 6 years extension in 2016 to continue as a member, a full signatory member of Washer Court. 2017, we submitted the application for provisional status as Sydney and Dublin Accord. We were accepted in 2016 at a meeting in Anchorage, Alaska, and I was there together with the then president, Dr. Ruslan. We actually do a very, very fast and quick job. In record time, we get full signatory members. It took 9 years or 6 years for the Washer Court for us to achieve full status. But in the case of Sydney and Dublin, it took us only 1 year. I think the experience that we went through for Washer Court has provided us a lot strong leverage for us to be accepted as a full member in 2018 at the meeting in Malaysia. We will be undergoing, supposedly, the review for Washer Court 2020 for 2021, but due to the COVID-19 and the pandemic, the decision by the governing body is to postpone the review period by 1 year. So we are expect this year to go through, we should be going through a review for Washer Court, and we will be doing it next year, hopefully, inshallah. Yeah. So can we move to the next one? All right. Now, the journey for us becoming a WA full signatories has taken many challenges, and there are many who are involved, who have been involved in helping us achieving these recognitions. Of course, fundamentally, it is an outcome based. And initially, it was more for awareness, for us to go through the awareness program to get everybody on board, especially from the IHL and the academia group community. It moved towards, I think in the early stage when we first came up with the so-called manuals or guideline book, it was basically to really, it was very, I remember when Professor Megat was preparing all this manual for us, it was very prescriptive. And maybe we took the model of even ABET, the toughest of them, to be the basis of our manual, right? We could have easily taken the easier one, but we wanted to make it pretty high in ensuring our quality, our education quality in the country. And we went through the years to provide the guide on the outcome-based implementation. And finally, I think we are matured after the last initiative on the review. We are considered to be one of the senior members of the signatory. And now it's time for us to really look at the outcome evidence. The last review, the last document that we had was 2017. We prepared, and I must appreciate the working committee who were preparing or were working day and night to look into the areas of improvement and change in accordance to the requirement of the Washer Court. And we managed to compile and complete our review before the end of the year 2019. But due to the issues within, we were only able to get it through the board early last month. And on that note, we are now able to share with all members the effective date for implementation and adoptions of the 2020 EAC standard will be 1st of May 2020. Of course, this will be brief later on. There are the so-called issues pertaining to the full adoption, especially those on the transitional period. Yeah. Can we go to the next? All right. These are, I would say, the Hall of Fame, actually. Malaysia has been very much involved in the mentoring, reviewing, and even guiding to many of the jurisdictions after us that wanted or desired to be a full members of what's the court. Among others, I would say that you can see Pakistan, where we were both the nominator and the mentor until they became a full member, and Professor Megat as well as Azlan, who was an actual associate director, then were actually involved in mentoring Pakistan from provisional to full signatory member. Of course, Rocky Wong was involved in the review of Engineers Australia as a panel, as a team member. Megat, and again, was also involved in the review of Turkey MUDEC membership in 2016, and subsequent to that, we were mentoring. The more important, we took over the mentorship for Bangladesh by where Prof. Megat, Prof. Wan Hamidun, Prof. Dato' Wan Hamidun, as well as Siti Hawa were the nominated mentors for Bangladesh. And we hope the job is still ongoing, that Bangladesh will achieve their full signatory status by the next meeting, but not this 2020, but hopefully, inshallah, 2021. Dr. Rashid was involved in the review for Japan, and Rocky Wong and also Azlan was also involved as observers and nominators for Thailand, which is applying for provisional status and has been accepted at the last meeting in Hong Kong. I was involved very much in helping up with Nigeria, Korean, where myself, Dr. Rashid, and also Prof. Aziz, then who was our ED, was very much involved in the mentorship as well as the nomination for Korean, Nigeria to be admitted as a provisional member. They have not yet, and we were hoping that 2020 will be the year for them to be admitted. Myanmar has been very much adopting our system, and they have been very, very close with us. And Dr. Hasrail was the last nominate observers and nominators to propose to submit Myanmar's application as provisional status, and they have been accepted in the last meeting in Hong Kong. And finally, there is the India, the Megat. Again, Megat has been frequently appointed to be either reviewer, mentor, or observers or nominators. And he was also our reviewer for India. So you can see that the lists are quite extensive, and we hope in years to come, there are many among some of you who will be nominated for the international function or duties to be either the reviewer, observers, nominators, or even mentor for the various signatories, both Washington, Sydney, and Dublin, among all the members. Can we go to the next slide, please? Right. Just out of interest, this has been the record card to say for EAC. The total number of programs that we have accredited since 1998 to current is 348. Of course, some of the program has been phased out. There are 78 programs being phased out. And currently, the active program still under accreditorship is 270. Of course, there was still 5 programs that we declined for reasons. And the total number of IHL involved in conducting this program is 56, and out of 56, 17 are public university and 39 are private university, making a total of 56. Next. Okay, in conclusion, I still got my time there. I sincerely hope for today's briefing, and I would like to thank the three presenters, Engineer Hasril, Prof. Lau, and Dr. Liu. They are all our ADs who will be taking time to present the new documents, and inshallah, they will be also the one who will be able to clarify on any points of uncertainties. Yeah. I hope by today's briefing, it will give the opportunity for all of us to be more familiar with the new standards and hopefully be proficient with it for its full adoption at the respective IHL. And as I mentioned earlier, the effective date for implementation of the 2020 EAC manual or standard is on 1st of May 2020. Yeah? And I do hope that issues that will be raised and discussed at this forum will form further guidance for us to improve further the manuals or the standards. It is not cast in stone. There are improvements as we go, as we move along, and with the intention for us to ensure that the standards that we are maintaining the standard of equivalence with all the other signatory countries. I would like to appeal to all participants, especially with the support of the respective IHL, both IPTA and IPTS, that we do need, EAC cannot function without volunteers. We do need volunteers to come forward as panel members, both the senior panel and the panel members that goes around all the time to conduct their evaluation and assessment of all programs, both the new and the continuing programs that are conducted at the respective IHL. And I sincerely hope with the training conducted by EAC from time to time, there will be a lot of response from the IHL, from the academia and also industry, particularly from the industry, for us to nominate or to appoint them as our panel of assessor panels. Finally, I would like to thank the organizing committee, in particular Dr. Siti Hawa, our director, for all the arrangement made, and I sincerely hope it will be a successful briefing and knowledge sharing session that you will be conducting this afternoon. Saya sudahi dengan wabillahi taufiq wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Sekian, terima kasih. Back to you, Professor Rajkumar.
Thank you, Dato', for your informative and insightful talk. We hope that the participants of the webinar can now see how the EAC standards or the efforts that has been put in fits in with the International Engineering Alliance. How are we aligned with the international community? Okay, thank you again, Dato'. It was a very good presentation from your side. Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda for the day. All right. So for the next hour, we have put together exciting line of speakers who will be talking to us about the EAC standards 2020. And I will briefly introduce the speakers. The first speaker is Engineer Dr. Liu Xiaopao, followed by Engineer Professor Law Chung Lim, and finally, Engineer Associate Professor Hasril Hasini. And I would like to remind the participants, the question and answer session is scheduled to take place after the presentation from the speakers. Please use the hashtag based for each of the criterion. Okay, I believe the Secretariat has already provided the resources for the participants to actually interact with the speakers. And I will actually be picking up these questions and passing on to the speakers. And please also indicate your name and your institution for our record keeping. Okay, so I'll pass on to the first speaker, Engineer Dr. Liu, please.
Thank you, Prof. Raj. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, right. Very good afternoon to all who are listening in here today. Today, my colleagues and I will be addressing the changes in the EAC standard 2020, and followed by a section of Q&A that you may have questions that you need to ask. Okay, as mentioned by Dr. Siddiq, this standard will take place from 1st May 2020 and will be effective for all cohorts from year 1 to year 4. However, should the program actually require time to adapt to the changes, EAC will allow a reasonable amount of time for the transition to take place as justified by the program. All right. I will first go through the qualifying requirement, then followed by the accreditation criteria. This is in section. This is in section 6, page 8 of the new standard 2020. All right. There's only one amendment or change in the qualifying requirement. That is number 8, external examiner or advisory report. Now the report is required for every 2 academic years, right? This change is expected to help the program to improve the academic standard in a more consistent manner. We use 2 terminologies here to cater for institutions that actually use different terminology for that. The scope of the external examiner or advisor is actually stated in the Appendix B, which Dr. Hazril will address it a bit later. Yeah. All right. Okay. The first criterion, number 1, program education objective. Basically, there's no change here. All right. The institution continue with the collection of data and use the data to check against the performance indicator and use the result for CQI. Same for criterion 2, program outcomes. There's no change as well. The institution are to continue with the data collection or the assessment of the 12 program outcomes with complexity in mind. Okay, next year we will have our Washington Accord review in 2021, where complex problem solving and demonstration of program outcomes are one of the major focus of the review. Right, let me move on to the third criterion, academics curriculum. Here, I think the most number of changes actually happen in this criterion. Therefore, I would actually cover half of it, followed by the other half by Prof. Lau. All right. I think the first thing that is the underpinning word has been removed from the standard 2020. That means that your Appendix B is now a guideline for the institution when they review and design their academic curriculum. Is no longer compulsory now, it's just as a reference, right? And you also note that the electronic branch has also been removed from Appendix B because it's a sub-branch of the electrical discipline. Right. With regards to the industry involvement in the contents and outcomes, The terminology such as PEO and POs have been removed as well, because this term is, based on the input from stakeholder. This term seems like a jargon to them. All right. On paragraph 8 about the SLT, the word normally has been included to cater for institution with a different semester system, for example, 12 weeks or 17 weeks, as long as the 135 SLT credits are demonstrated, are shown, are fulfilled. Okay, under industry training, you will see that the work-based learning has been introduced under this heading. As we believe that the industrial training is probably the best place to start, as they're actually free from other courses being offered in the semester. Okay, just to sidetrack a little bit, the industry training must be conducted before the final exam. I understand that many of the institution actually have this problem during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this industry training can be conducted after the final semester, or can be in a non-continual form, right? Meaning you can do 4 weeks now or another 4 weeks a bit later, or it can be in the work from home base, right? This is the same like the for the external examiner visit. All right, if you have, since it's stated it must be every 2 years, the visit can be conducted in online or virtual mode, whereby the evidences can be actually shown in the next visit. All right, the work-based learning is essentially modules taken in the industrial setting, whereby the teaching and learning activities and assessment are taught, co-taught and actually assessed by the industry and academic supervisor. Unlike the industry training where students apply what they learn in the industry setting or to gain exposure in engineering practice environment, you will find that the credit calculation is given in the new EAC 2020 standard, and the detail can be found in MQA guidelines to good practice on work-based learning guidebook 2016. I think I have spoken long enough. I would like to pass the mic to my colleagues, Prof. Lau. Right, I will come back a bit later at the Q&A.
Thank you, Liu. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? Okay, good day, ladies and gentlemen. I will continue with the changes under Criterion 3 academic curriculum. On page 4.
Lau, your voice is a bit far away.
Okay, thank you. On page 14, is that better? On page 14, which is related to tutorial, in the new standard 2020, that we have replaced can be this term to the tutorial. So previously in our 2017 manual, we have this sentence in the manual: tutorial is part and parcel. So now it is changed to tutorial can be part of the program. We understand that to deliver a course or a subject effectively, there are many ways, there are many different types of delivery methods, and therefore tutorial is not the only method. For instance, we can introduce problem-based, we can introduce project-based or workshop. So in this regard, we welcome IHL to use their creativity to enhance the learning experience for the student. The next changes is in laboratory work on page 14. Previously, for manual 2017, it says, it is expected that laboratory work shall involve be open-ended exercises. So now in the new standard 2020, the new changes is, it is expected that a significant number of laboratory work shall be open-ended. So now we want to move on to another level where we expect students exposed to complex problem solving skill, and therefore we hope IHL can provide more open-ended lab work to the student. Again, this is with the expectation that the delivery shall enhance the learning experience and therefore allow the students to acquire the solving complex problem skills. On the same page, which is page 14, in the previous manual under industrial training, and now page 15 under the new standard 2020. Previously, we said the central aim of the industrial training is to achieve appreciation, not to acquire craft skill. So now we are saying that the aim of the industrial training is to achieve appreciation and or capability of carrying out complex engineering activities. So here you can see that we would like to see more engagement in complex engineering activities, and therefore again to allow the student to acquire the problem, the solving complex problem solving skill. Yeah, so that is the expectation that that you can see when we revised the standard. And just now, ILU has mentioned about work-based learning, so I don't want to delve into this, but this is just to draw your attention that on page 15 in the new standard, we have another paragraph which is about the work-based learning. So if you want to know more about the work-based learning, you can actually read this paragraph. Of course, if you want to know more information about what is meant by work-based learning and you wish to embed work-based learning in your curriculum and in your delivery, you can then refer to MQA's guidelines. Okay, next I will talk about the changes that we have in the Criterion student. So for the new standard 2020, you can see that we have make a small change in the in this paragraph, yeah, which is under student. Previously, we mentioned that students intending to pursue engineering programs shall have a good understanding of mathematics and physical sciences. So now we change this, yeah, from physical sciences to natural sciences. We understand that there are new emerging engineering programs, for instance, bioengineering, biomedical engineering in recent years. So there is a need to allow the IHL to include other sciences as the entry requirement. And therefore, we have the new changes in the 2020 standard. Okay, next, I would like to pass the mic to Hasril.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Lau. I hope all of you can hear me. While waiting, I just want to upload my presentation slides. Can you see the slides? Okay, all right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sejahtera and good afternoon to all. Okay, I hope that we are all doing good in this trying time. Okay, thank you very much for joining us in this EAC webinar. Okay, as stated at the beginning of the session by Datuk Siddiq, okay, the aim of this session is to basically summarize the changes to our new EAC Standard 2020, which was released in May 2020. Okay, we have listened to Dr. Liu and also Professor Lau, okay, basically on all the 7 important criterions that we will be evaluating the ISL, okay, which consists of the OBE, the program outcome, program educational objective, okay, academic curriculum, students, okay, staff, facilities, and also QMS. Okay, on my part here, I will be continuing with the presentation, okay, that describe the requirement or the changes in the EAC Standard 2020 on 2 of the important criterion, which is on staff and academic staff and also support staff, as well as on the quality management system. Okay, if you have gone through the EAC Standard 2020 and compare with the EAC Manual 2017, maybe you will notice that there is actually no appreciable difference between the standard and also the manual. Okay, nevertheless, we will try to highlight, okay, what is important, okay, for most of the ISL to take action upon, okay, on the changes. On the academic and support staff, okay, as usual, we still require the minimum of 8 full-time academic staff, okay, relevant to the program. So in this case, when we talk about 8 full-time academic staff supporting a program, it can be a mixture of staff teaching engineering, mathematics, and also science subjects. Okay, and all staff teaching the engineering subject must be registered with the Board of Engineers. Okay, this is the requirement, okay, that all of us must comply with. So generally, every program, okay, must have the minimum of 8 full-time professional engineers registered with the Board of Engineers and also actively teaching the program. Okay, on the other hand, for a program with a total students of more than 160, it is required that 30% of the minimum staff required to meet the maximum staff-student ratio. So we require 30% of the teaching staff to have professional engineer qualifications. Okay, and then it is also mentioned that the number of part-time staff recruited for a single program, okay, shall not exceed 40% of the total number of staff full-time serving the program. Okay, on criteria number 6, actually we don't have any changes in the facilities, so we might just want to skip. Basically for the facilities, I think we are all aware that in order to offer a program, an engineering program, ISL must have the required facilities to support the teaching and learning for a particular program. So I think there is no changes in the facilities compared between the Manual 2017 and also Standard 2020. So I'll just move to the last criterion, which is important, the quality management system, the QMS. Okay, we start off with the external assessment and also advisory system. Okay, the first one with regard to the external examiner. If you look at the new standard 2020, okay, ISL must have, or a program must have an external examiner just to look over the conduct of your program. And if you refer to the new manual, the new standard, the Appendix E, it provides the guideline for the content of the report. Okay, now the guideline, I would say, is much general as compared to the previous one. So as you know that the external examiner, it should be a person of high academic standing, okay, in the relevant engineering discipline. So I think one of the most important changes that you might want to adhere to is that the evaluation done by the external examiner is to be made at least once in every 2 years. Okay, rather than, if you remember in our manual 2017, they just mentioned about 2 visits in 4 years. So when you have 2 visits in 4 years, there are many cases whereby we have back-to-back visits maybe in 1 year. So we don't want this, because this is important as part of your quality improvement system. So now we are expecting that it has to be done at least once in 2 years. Okay, on the second note, we are talking about the IAP, the Industry Advisory Panel, okay, which must consist of a practicing engineer or maybe your alumni or employers of engineers, okay, for the purpose of planning and continuous improvement for the program quality. So we are expecting that the IAP panel, okay, should be specific for the program. Okay, so that usually we want it to be specific to a program, so that when they give the input has to be very, very specific to the program. Okay, and then in terms of the number of IAP serving the program, okay, it has to be appropriate. When you have the word panel there, we are expecting it to be 2 or more. But considering everything, usually for a panel member to attend to a meeting, as an example, okay, there might be somebody who are not able to attend. So in order to make this advisory panel meeting a success, it is recommended, okay, that you have more than 2 lah, basically. So you should be able to get good advice from this panel if you have more than 2 or panel. Yeah? So in this case, ISL or a program should leverage on the IAP panel that you have. Maybe you want to use them as part of the teaching and learning process, giving talks, seminars, and whatnot. Okay, so those are the criterion or the changes in the criterion on the academic and support staff, as well as on the QMS. Now I will continue on the next one, which is on the self-assessment report. Okay, this is also important for an ISL to prepare for a visit, especially when you want to prepare for your SAR. So what are the changes? Basically, I mean, if you refer to the EAC manual 2017, the descriptions of what needs to be included in the report is quite comprehensive. Okay, now we try to simplify it, make it a bit more general, so that it will, I mean, you have plenty of things to describe in your SAR. So when you talk about PEO as an example, so we just require you to describe the PEO development assessment, okay, that include but not limited to the following: performance indicators, the assessment instruments, okay, their achievement, CQI activity, and stakeholder involvement. I think this number of, or these items is also similar to the program outcome as well. So usually when you want to describe your program objective, program outcome, it has to start from the development, okay, the assessment, and also the result. And last but not least is also on the CQI activities. All right, and then the last one, I will talk about what are the appendix that we have in our new EAC Standard 2020. I think this is the significant one, okay? In terms of the areas, the engineering content for selected engineering discipline and innovative programs. If you look back at our EAC manual 2017, we have 5 broad areas: civil, mechanical, electrical, chemical, and electronics. Okay, in the new standard, we combine the electrical and electronics, it becomes electrical. Okay, the rest remains the same: civil, mechanical, electrical, and also chemical. These are what we call the broad areas. I'm sure that many of the ISL, they are having a more specific program. Okay, so you have freedom, okay, to identify what are the subjects or what are the courses that you want to include into your specific program. Okay, as long as it meet the minimum standard areas or standard subjects for a particular broad area. So this will give you more freedom in terms of designing your own curriculum, okay, in terms of designing your program, so that your program is actually at par with the current technology, for example. Okay, and then for the panel in the Appendix D, these are the evaluation panel report section. We decided in our previous session that usually we focus, in any of the visit, what is important is the OBE, the most important criterion, the PO and PO, and then we have the academic curriculum. Okay, these two big criterion, in terms of the evaluation or in terms of the elaboration of the report, it has to be very, very specific and well elaborated, whereby we find out that for the rest of the criterion, for example, like student, I think these are mainly on numbers lah. Either, if you're looking at the example for student, in terms of their student admission, is either you meet the requirement or you do not meet the requirement, either yes or no. So if you are panel, you just need to tick one of these with some justification, of course, with some remark that you want to highlight to our council members. Okay, similarly, it goes to the quality management system, which is fairly straightforward in terms of their quantity rather than in terms of their quality. But of course, you have the avenue to do the elaboration, okay, in one of the section at the bottom, the explanation section. Okay, this is what I meant by the external examiners checklist. Okay, for the report, based on the previous experience, we are, when your external examiner come to visit a program or come to evaluate the program, okay, these are the guideline on what are the criteria that needs to be evaluated by your external examiner. Okay, this report should consider assessing the following. Okay, for example, the program curriculum, the OBE, okay, the quality of staff, okay, student workload, okay, quality of the examination papers, QMS, and also the facilities. But of course, not limited to this. You are free. You are, as an ISL, you are free to design what are the kind of report that your external examiner should produce, especially if you are a research-based university as an example, there should be more than that. So this is not the limitation. Okay, you are free to go beyond this criterion, but at least you have to have these items to be included in your external examiner's report. Okay, just to meet the requirement by the EAC. Okay, and then in Appendix H for the guideline for the evaluators or the panel, we have changed from the 3 performance levels, which was poor, satisfactory, and good, to only 2 levels. Okay, either you meet or you do not meet, unsatisfactory or satisfactory. So this is more direct lah. So we don't have any middle range. It's either yes or no. So these are applicable to those evaluation panel that goes to evaluate any of the program. So I guess we are at the end of my session. I will stop now and I'll pass to Prof. Raj for the next session. Please, Prof. Raj.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to the all the speakers, Engineer Dr. Liu, Engineer Professor Law, and then Associate Professor Asril. Thank you very much for your insightful talk. Okay, and as I can see, we have come to the end of the presentation. And we have already have a few questions from the participant. I can see that here. Okay, so now I think the speakers will take questions from the participant. Okay. All right, so I will I'm looking at the questions. Okay, so we will. Okay, we have got a question on OBE. Okay, and this question is from Yusim, and he says that PO1 is a CPS type complex problem solving type of PO, but specifically states the need to cover WK1 to WK4, while according to the attributed listed by the IEA, CPS encompasses WP1 plus WP2 to WP7. So WP1 covers WK3, WK4, WK5, WK6, and WK8. Can the panel kindly share their thought on this? Okay, this is to do with the this thing. Okay, what we will do now is that I suggest the person that actually put forward this question to be a bit more specific. Yeah, a bit more specific. All right. We'll move on to the next question to the panel. All right. Okay. The first question on the academic curriculum is that is there any minimum SLT requirement for specialization subjects? Can the panel answer that?
Okay. Right. Prof. Raj?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that question. Right, for specialization, there's no minimum. It's only about the engineering core, which is about 90. Yeah, so the specialization can come into part of the 90.
All right. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. The next question is regarding complex problem solving. The participant has actually asked us a question. Can you give an example? What is complex problem, since it's really subjective?
Let me take this question. In fact, our standard, we have an appendix that define what is a complex problem. Yeah, it's WP. So we have WP1 until WP7. Yeah. So if you want to know more about that, you can actually refer to our standard appendix.
Okay.
So basically, we are actually saying that a particular problem is a complex problem. It should have the attributes of WP1 plus some of the remaining WP, which means that WP1 plus the remaining WP2 until WP7. So we can have WP1 plus 3 or 6 or 2 or 5 or a number of these attributes. So at least we have 3 attributes and above. I think that can be classified as a complex problem.
Okay, thanks, Professor Law. Staying on the subjects of complex engineering, there's another question here. We have got another question here. There is a concern with EAC Standard 2020, which there's more focus on complex engineering problems and complex engineering activities in the program. Will it be any standard guide on this? That we need to have any specific or minimum percentage of subjects in the program which must cater for this?
Maybe I answer and then maybe my colleagues can add.
Yeah.
The standard doesn't say what is the minimum, but we expect there should be, complex problem solving skill in the delivery, and I think this is good for the student because according to a survey in 2015 and 2020, one of the desired graduate attributes is actually complex problem solving skill. So the expectation is that when we look at the major projects, it should be complex problem. And we look at the industrial training, we also expect that the student carried out complex engineering activities. Yeah, so we have final year project, we have integrated design projects. We expect those projects to be complex problem, and to know what are the attributes that are desired, we can actually refer to the appendix stated in the standard.
Okay, thank you.
May I Jack,
Sir, yes.
I think the complex problem should be seen in context. The context would be, and you talk about the Dublin Accord for technician, he's expected to solve well-defined problems. Then we progress further up the food change, and you now come to engineering technologies. His training and attributes should equip him to solve generally defined problems. So beyond the generally defined and well-defined problems are problems which the engineers must solve. I believe this is also one way of understanding that when you talk about in comparison to the engineering team, if you are the leader of the engineering team, there are certain problems your other members cannot solve because they are complex in nature. They are not well-defined nor generally defined. So that may be one of the issues that we should see from a more practical way than just how do you really define complex problems. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
IR Rocky. Let me also draw your attention to Appendix B, Part D, D donkey, definition of complex problem solving. So here you can actually see the attributes and also the characteristic. Maybe let me quickly go through the attributes. WP1 is depth of knowledge required, and it says WK3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. So 3 and 4 refers to engineering fundamental, and 4 refers to specialist knowledge, and 5 is design. Yeah, and then we have 6 and 8. And WP2 is range of conflicting requirements. WP3 is depth of analysis required. WP4 is a familiarity of issues, and 5 is extent of applicable codes. 6 is about extent of stakeholder involvement, and 7 is independence. So if a particular problem has some of these attributes, then it is complex problem.
Okay, Prof. Lau, can I add a bit? Yeah. Okay. Back to the question the second question by the participant. Okay, Engineer Rocky, I agree to Engineer Rocky is that the complex problem actually are those problems actually faced in the industry. Yeah, basically we want to expose the student to solve those problems similar to the industry. Yeah, because those problems actually faced in industry are very likely to be a complex problem. That's why industry-based FIP or industry-based capstone project are strongly encouraged. If you want to, I think there's no quantity being defined how much complex problem solving should be incorporated. So basically, if you look at as Prof. Lau mentioned, if you look at WP1 or the depth of knowledge, those subjects classified as WK3, which is engineering fundamental, WK4, engineering specialization, and those involve design, engineering technology, the technology, the research, which is WK8, can be used to tackle complex problem solving. But not all subject, that does not mean all subject you must use to tackle complex problem solving. So at the faculty or the department level, you can identify the subject to tackle all this, the complex problem solving. And in addition, I think from PO1 to 7 is actually mentioned that from 1 to 7, the student need to demonstrate the outcome on solving complex problem. Basically, those subjects that address 1 to 7, PO1 to 7 can be used to what we call can implement complex problem solving in the syllabus. I hope that we have actually answered your question. Prof. Raj.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. There is another question here. Okay. It says that now that the electronic track is parked under electrical, and we have lost a few of the areas such as the programming techniques and microprocessor systems for programs that are due to submit for the SAR this year, do we just lump the subjects that were parked under this into any random areas?
Okay, Prof. Raj, maybe I take this question.
There's another question also relevant to this. With the current 4 broad areas of programs, civil, mechanical, electrical, and chemical, such as how program providers can design the curriculum to ensure graduate engineer discipline to be justified, especially in considering electrical or electronic discipline.
Okay, before that, I think the Appendix B now has been categorized as guideline. Unlike the past, it was underpinning. Yeah? So the reason why the council want to do that is to give to actually encourage innovation and creativity in designing engineering curriculum. Back to the question by the first participant is that the electronic, yes, it actually has been removed, but it doesn't mean that you actually lost the area. You can actually still follow the guideline to design your curriculum depending on the needs of your electronic program. What's the second question again, Prof. Raj? There are 2 questions just now.
The second question is about where will they be graduating, in terms of, where will they be parked? The second question. The second question
Okay.
is that such
Okay.
as how program provider can design the curriculum to ensure graduate engineers discipline be justified, especially considering an electrical or electronic discipline. Yeah.
Okay. The thing is that the Appendix B can be used as a guideline, and you can refer to other sources like the Board of Engineers, the 4 courses that can define electrical, like the field and circuit, the electrical machine, and so on. Another source that you can refer to is the IEA, WK1 to WK8, which is the engineering knowledge profile. So the reason because IEA came up with this WK1 to WK8 engineering profile, knowledge profile, is to help the institution around the world to design the engineering curriculum. Yeah, I think these are the sources that you can refer to in designing engineering curriculum. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Prof.
Okay, I'd like to.
Prof. Allow me to add, just for a general aspect, if you look at the 4 main disciplines, we have that in the standard. For other programs, for instance, say I'm from chemical engineering, for instance, food is related to chemical engineering. So if a particular IHL wants to develop and offer a course that is not chemical, which is the main discipline, but a substitute discipline, for instance, biochemical or food or petroleum, if that's the case, we hope that the IHL can carry out a comprehensive benchmarking so that they can learn from other institutions how they design the curriculum. So from there, with a very good comprehensive benchmarking, actually the IHL can decide what is actually best for their program. That's all.
Mr. Chair, may I intervene?
Yes, please.
Especially the question on the design of the electrical program, of which I've been trying to fight this for a number of years now, whereby very often if the IHL design his program as electrical, in keeping with the modern development of electrical engineering, whereby much of the control are digitalized, computer-based, etc., etc. Unfortunately, when the student with that qualification of electrical engineering, but the detail of his transcript shows that he has 50 odd more percent in electronic, the poor child is given the electronic registration, which is of course very unfair to the graduate in that he's limited to only working in electronic factory and other things related to electronic, and cannot even be a submitting person eventually. This is where the IHL must come in as a block and tell the Board of Engineer, which is of course responsible for slotting whether the candidate should be electrical or electronic, though under the so-called electrical discipline as a family, that modern electrical engineering is very much electronic bias. It's no more just the Ohm's law and equal balance. You know, we are doing linear circuitry. We are not doing a balanced circuitry. And the modern electrical program are very much electronic inclined. When you talk of Internet of Things, computer-based control, frankly, it is all. And the Board of Engineers need to be convinced by the IHL, which should be in keeping with the modern trend of preparing the student as electrical engineering to be very broad-based and ready for IR4. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rocky. All right, we have got another question here on industrial training requirement. The industrial training requirement. So there's a question from Curtin University on the minimum duration for conventional industrial training and also work-based learning. Can the panel comment on this?
Maybe I start first, and if there's any further input, or Hasril?
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay, then I start first, and then Hasril can add. On industrial training, the expectation is the duration is 8 weeks consecutively, and before the final year. Of course, during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic duration, we allow the student to carry out their industrial training after the final semester. Of course, that is only for COVID-19 pandemic. When situation is back to normal, then we expect we follow the standard 2020. Of course, IHL can arrange a longer industrial training duration. For that, IHL can actually decide, to also bring in WBL, the work-based learning. And it can be, industrial training plus work-based learning. And if you look at work-based learning, there is one component which is the dependent learning. So it depends on the IHL how they want to deliver WBL together with industrial training. Hasri, anything to add?
Okay, I just want to add regarding the industrial training. Of course, our manual states that the minimum requirement is 8 weeks, but somehow during this COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of things happens, and we do accept the student if they want to work from home, okay, according to the instruction of their company, as long as the work from home is closely supervised by the industrial people or the industrial supervisors. I think this is the key point here. It has to be under the direct supervision of the industry people rather than the lecturers or professors at the IHL. And to add to the work-based learning, I think for work-based learning, IHL has to be a bit careful, because usually the work-based learning, the way our manual states that the way we calculate the effective learning time and whatnot has to be adhered to. And most importantly, we believe that if you plan to pursue the work-based learning, okay, the procedures and whatnot has to be read hand in hand with the MQA requirement for the work-based learning. I think MQA has produced a comprehensive guideline on this work-based learning. It is not simply send your student to the company to go for WBL. Actually, it involves some kind of MOU and whatnot with the company, because it involves the very strong commitment from the company who want to organize the work-based learning. So my suggestion, if you have that kind of planning, so please have a look at the MQA guideline as well as refer to our EAC standard as well. Thank you.
May I come in?
Yes.
Traditionally, in the 4-year engineering program, at least during my time, during the break of the first year, we usually go to workshop for training. where we will learn how to file, how to drill, how to weld. The second year holiday, we would also go for training, and that will be in the field. In others, we will be following the construction, etc. The third year, and this is what we are now talking industrial attachment, the third year training is usually engineering practice, things like relating to design. And hence, we would appreciate that this third year student will probably go to outfit where there are design work and other related work that will be involved, designing program, whatever work schedule, etc. And for this, you can have virtual technical attachment, which I am trying to work with one of the firms. And this virtual attachment is not only based on the following what the firm would do in terms of design, but even we can go into the MOU with the IHL to give them work-based learning, in the sense that there are so many projects that perhaps one consulting firm may be handling, and the engineer could be given an assignment to even do a simple thing like for electrical engineering. Can you study the effect of SLB, research SVD, for example, or do the study of earthing if you had something. So those are actually very convenient. But we notice this, virtual technical, virtual industrial training, most students, when they approach, do not want to go simply because they expect the allowances to be paid. And here you are in this bad time. I don't think firms are prepared to pay allowances. And if there's some means where the government can come in, I think virtual industrial attachment, and because it's third year, it has to be design-based, engineering-based rather than fieldwork based or workshop-based. So if you look at this perspective of a design practice-based, it can really be done even companion with work-based learning.
All right. Thank you, Rocky. Okay, so we will move on to the next question. Okay, before we move on, I'd just like to remind the participant to be to state your questions clearly. And there's a number of questions on the COVID-19 pandemic, on basically seeking some sort of instruction on what needs to be done. I think we will leave that till the end on some of the questions on the COVID-19, but we'll try to focus more on the EAC standards 2020. Okay, so we'll try to focus on that. Okay, so the next question here is on the open-ended labs, and the question is basically saying, looking at how to judge if the program has enough open-ended labs. Can the panel comment on that?
Okay, I will try to answer that. The number has not been, has been specified. It's only the significant number of the lab experiment must be open-ended. In the past, we do expect the IHL to show about 3 to 5 open-ended laboratory experiment. In view to the current emphasis on complex problem solving, because the open-ended lab is a perfect avenue to actually implement complex problem solving, where students will address especially the PO number 4, where the WK8 research is actually mentioned. Basically, investigation here means that you need to do the literature review, then carry out the research method, like designing experiment, then you collect data and form a conclusion. So that's why now the open-ended lab is pretty much emphasized in the 2020 manual. As far as the manual our understanding is about 50% of the lab experiment must show the open-ended nature, whereby because open-ended will lead to multiple answer, which is exactly the WP3, the depth of analysis. So obviously, in order to solve open-ended lab, you need the depth of knowledge from WP1 and probably some of the other element to actually qualify of a complex problem. Okay, so I just asked my other colleague if there anything to add. Right.
Prof. Raj, allow me to add.
Yes,
first of
please.
all, I would like to share with you the WP. There's also a request from one of the participants. I think you can see my screen now where you can see the WP. So if we look at the open-ended lab, actually this is a very good delivery tool to link with a complex problem. And for instance, if the lab work is related to WK3, which is engineering fundamental, or WK4, which is specialist knowledge, then you have these attributes already. And the expectation is that a complex problem have characteristic WP1. Now we have this, okay? Then we just need to look at the remaining WP attributes. So for instance, just now, ILU mentioned to us that depth of analysis required. So if there's no obvious solution to that particular problem, in this particular case, that is the lab work, then it has the attributes of WP3 already. And if a particular piece of lab work that we introduce, say the application of codes, standards, then in this case, it has the attributes of WP5. Yeah, so by looking at this table, by looking at the definition of complex problem solving, actually you are able to fine-tune or tweak your existing laboratory work and make it complex, and therefore it is open-ended.
Prof. Lau, can you keep the screen, Prof. Lau?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I like to draw your attention because I think earlier, one participant mentioned that about WP1, why WK1 and why WK2 are not listed as part of the depth of knowledge in WP1, whereas you see WK3, K4, K5, 6, and 8. Whereas in PO1, it actually shows WK1 and WK2, same as the problem analysis. If you look at the WK1 is actually the natural science. Then you have WK2, which is the mathematics. These two subjects are actually too fine to be applied for in engineering application. So the real engineering application actually happen in WK3, like for example the electronics, digital electronics, probably the thermodynamics. Then you see WK4. You see that the specialization actually come in. This is where you can actually apply the complex problem, because these are the engineering fundamental and engineering specialization. Whereas you can't do that with the natural science. For example, the Newton law, Faraday law. These are theory. So you need to go into the aspect of where, say, for example, electromagnetic law apply in electrical machine. Then you can use to solve a complex problem. I hope that actually answered that question. Right. Okay, back to you, Raj.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we go back again to there was a first question on the OBE. This is for the panel members' thought. Okay, let's go through this question. I think so. Basically, it says PO1 is a CPS type of PO, but specifically states the need to cover WK1 to WK4. While according to the attributes listed by the IEA, CPS encompasses WP1 plus WP2 to WP7. WP1 covers WK3, WK4, WK5, WK8, and WK8. Can the panel kindly share their thoughts on this?
I don't get the question. Okay.
Maybe let me start to answer this question, and then my colleagues can provide further input. Again, let me share my screen with you. Okay, so again, we come back to WP. Now, if you refer to PO statement, PO1 has WK1, 2, 3, and 4. But when we define complex problem solving, it only has WK3 and WK4. So the participant actually is asking, since WK1 and 2 are not in this definition, so how are we going to measure the attainment of PO1 if we only focus on WK1, right? So the expectation is that now, if we look at PO1, we actually expect PO1 to cover a broad range, yeah, meaning that WK1 science and WK2 mathematics and WK3 fundamental and specialist knowledge. So we need to ensure that the student are able to acquire this broad spectrum of knowledge profile, right? And then apply this in solving a complex problem, which then require the student to be able to tackle the problem that has all these attributes, yes, stated in this under the definition of complex problem solving. So if we are only giving a student a piece of work that is only mathematics, and therefore we don't pack this particular piece of work to measure the student's attainment of PO1. Instead, we can actually choose other piece of work that we assign to the student that has the attributes of WK3 or 4, and with the remaining attributes of WP. So in that case, if you look at your mapping carefully, you are actually you are able to identify what are those complex problem solving work that you assign to the student, where you will use that to measure the attainment of PO1, which is related to CPS. Maybe my colleagues wants to add more.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Okay, so okay, I guess that's quite a good explanation. All right, so I think we move on. We move on to the next one, which is under students, #3. There's only one question here. Do EAC consider the entry through Apple A admission and any consideration to Apple C exemptions? Can any of the panel shed a light on this?
Okay, I think I will try to answer that question. If you look at our EAC standard, the entry requirement for iPad is also included in the standard. Okay, what is important is that the fundamental basics that we use in order to accept all these engineering students is actually based on their fundamental knowledge. So in our case, if you look at the EAC standard 2020, these are, I mean, if ISL is able to come up with the system, okay, for the evaluation and also for allowing evaluating the transfer credit, by all means, feel free to do so. And also you have to make sure that this student taken from Appel can progress, okay, throughout the course. With proper result lah. I mean, they are not struggling towards the end of the final year. Okay. In other words, I mean, when the panel of evaluators come and evaluate your requirement, I think you have to ensure that student attain the appropriate bridging programs and whatnot. I mean, with regards to this entry qualification.
Okay, thank you.
May I come in, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Rocky, yes, please do.
Appel A has been much moved in the ETAC, the Technology and Technician Accrediting Council. And some university like UniKL have been very active in advocating this. But it has been admitted that while it is part of the entry qualification, frankly, with the standard established by MQA, it's not so easy to get recruit by way of the Appendix A, in particular for engineering program where the demand of mathematics and physics is so much higher. So it is there as one of the very rare options. It's not that there will be none, but for the student to really come in with FLA and getting the high standard established by MQA, he may still have problem with the maths and other scientific requirement. So it is there because in future we wouldn't know. But here we are actually addressing a big fundamental issue. We are getting fewer and fewer students interested in science and mathematics in secondary school. So what would be the captive market in future? So FLA would be one of those. And that would be for people who are very keen to progress into the technology field. But it's there, but not necessarily very well accepted mode of entry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rocky, for that explanation. Okay, so we move on to the, we got a few questions under staff. I would like to summarize them, okay? All right, the participants would like us to clarify on what is meant by 8 full-time staff relevant to a particular engineering discipline. Can IR Hasril clarify that?
Yeah, okay. I think the 8 number of staff, I mean, if you're looking at the program, let's say, for example, mechanical engineering program. I mean, if you want to teach mechanical engineering students, I believe you should have at least gone through the program on your own before you teach, so that you can have that kind of feeling of teaching what are the necessary fundamental subjects and requirement to teach a mechanical engineering student. So that is what is meant by the relevant engineering background. Okay, and then on top of that, we put in the 8 number of academic staff that could or can include the staff teaching the mathematics, the staff teaching the physics or any other sciences. So of course, the number of engineering background staff to serve a program has to be sufficient or significant as compared to the supporting subject like mathematics and also science. So the relevant engineering areas is actually referred to the major of the program. Okay, maybe if the other panel want to add, feel free to do so.
Prof. Flash, allow me to add a little bit.
Yes, Prof, please.
It actually depends on the types of program. For instance, I'm from chemical engineering. So if I look at chemical engineering, we probably have a small number of science-related subjects. The majority of our subjects are engineering-related. And therefore, we would need more engineers and then maybe 1 or 2 scientists. And if we need to assign a mathematician to teach our mathematics-related subjects, then we can maybe engage 1 mathematician, or we can actually employ an engineer to cover the engineering mathematics. So it all depends on the IHL's planning. And if you look at the manual, the standard, it actually says those who are assigned to teach engineering-related subjects, they should register with the Board of Engineers Malaysia, either as a graduate engineer or as an engineering technologist. Yeah, or even better as a professional engineer. So in that case, if you look at our SLT, the expectation is 90 SLT credit hours. Yeah, so if you have a ratio of say 50% engineer and 50% non-engineer, then the engineer will have a very high teaching load in that case. So it's actually up to the IHL to deploy their human resources in assigning teaching loads to the staff. just now, as I mentioned to you, it depends on the types of program. For instance, if we take electrical engineering, for instance, they may need staff whose background is physics to cover some of the physics related subjects. So in that case, they may employ one or two scientists. Yeah. So it all depends on the program and also depends on the planning of the IHL.
Okay. Prof. Raj, can I add a bit on this?
Yeah, please.
Right. Okay. This minimum eight academic staff from the relevant engineering discipline is actually a relaxed from the rules is very much relaxed compared to the 2017 accreditation manual, whereby it has been specified in the 2017 manual that the 8 academic staff must have the first degree must be in engineering. In this case here, the current 2020, as mentioned by Prof. Lau, if, for example, the electronics program, usually you probably need somebody in expert in physics or even mathematics, meaning they can be counted as part of the academic staff. Yeah, but majority of the 8 should be in the electronics so that they can cover the necessary area of electronics. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we go to the next question again under the staff, #4. Okay, and in this in the question, the participant has asked for phasing out program, 1 year remaining. Do we have to fulfill 3 PE requirements? Actually, phasing out programs.
Yeah, I think I can answer that questions. Even if you are talking about the program which you want to phase out, okay, bear in mind that the remaining student also needs to be registered with the Board of Engineers, and therefore it is necessary for the program to retain the minimum number of professional engineers serving that program until everybody is cleared out.
Okay, Nasril, I hope that actually answers the questions from the participants. Is there anything else from the other panel members, or any other members who would like to add on to this question? Okay.
Not from me. Not from
all
me.
right. Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll go on to the next question. Okay. The next question is it's a common question from a lot of the institution. Is basically I'll just repeat this question. Any grace period given to the university to be fully compliant with 3P registered with PEM? I believe there's been a circular sent out to all the IHL, but we'll let the panel answer this question. Thank you.
Okay, I will answer that. I mean, if we can still recall, the circular was sent out to IHL back in 2016. And it is expected that all IHL are taking necessary action to fulfill all the requirements that is needed. 30% of the academic staff serving or teaching engineering program must have a professional engineer status by the end of December 2020. So the requirement still maintained, and I hope all of the IHL are currently trying very hard to meeting this requirement. And I believe a number of IHL has already got their quota of 30%, even more than that, which is a good progress, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Any other addition from the other panel members on this? Okay,
not from me. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll move on to the next question. Okay, this is an interesting question. I think we should try to answer this. FYP, final year project or capstone projects solving the community, not industry related problem, can that be considered as solving a complex engineering problem? Can we expand that to also capstone projects? Basically, you know, we have been always talking about dealing with industry problems, but can we actually solve problems related to community related projects? You know, what's the panel's take on this? Thank you.
Okay, I will start. I will start with my take on that. First of all, I think the question is not quite complete. What does it mean by doing FYP based on the community? I mean, if you are asking me, I might have thought that, okay, what he meant is that he's building something, a piping system or water supply system to a remote community, so that can be considered as a community as well, or it can be also relevant to something like teaching kids in the rural community or psychology or something like that. So that can be considered as a community service as well. So it's kind of hard to answer that question because we don't know the nature. But if you ask me, as an engineering student, your final year project, your capstone, your IDP has to be relevant to the engineering program. It has to contain all the necessary elements, especially when you talk about FYP and IDP. We are expecting that it is covering or it summarizes all the 4-year study the student has gone through. So the element of engineering has to be there lah when you talk about the community. So that is my opinion on that lah.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please, Ms. Rocky.
Very interesting question. But we must differentiate between capstone project, integrated design project, and final year project. I think the final year project that finally leads to writing a thesis must be frankly very engineering centric. But nothing wrong with, on the other hand, in considering the integrated design project, a capstone project, which is the application of the summative knowledge that the student would have gained over the years until that period where they are expected to do this and to be a complex problem and multi-discipline issues to be solved. And if engineer, for example, were asked to solve the dengue problem, what is the issue of dengue? That is what you call stagnant water and irrigation. Perhaps our young engineers or young student rather could come up with some solution which our public health expert, which are not engineering centric, may not have been able to solve all these years. Never forget, the Panama Canal was eventually solved by engineering centric, by leaking out the malaria issue, for example. And if we are talking about traffic congestion in the area, I say SS2, if this final year, this integrated design project can come up with a very unique traffic congestion relief plan for SS2, nothing wrong with it. For example, as integrated, which is the use of summative knowledge and very complex in nature. But final year project, it has to be based on the discipline. The engineer will eventually have to be graduate as an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, whatever discipline he goes to at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rocky. Okay, so we move on to the next question. The next question is about CEng to conversion of CEng to PEng, and what sort of timeline are actually being given for this to fulfill this sort of requirement. I mean, conversion from CEng to PEng, and the IHL actually wants to know the timeline. Just basically the timeline, because the process itself takes time. Can the panel comment on that?
Hello,
Okay,
Prof. Raj. It's actually this year, all right, 2020. Hazrul, you want to add?
I mean, according to the standard, the 30% requirement that will be, the deadline of this December 2020, it is expected that 30% of the staff should have a professional engineering status. I think comes December 2020, that professional engineering status can include the chartered engineer and also other either APEC or EPR countries, which we also recognize as part of the professional engineer. But if we refer to the circular dated in 2016 by the Board of Engineers, even though some of the your academic staff member is obtaining their chartered engineer, those eligible encouraged to go through Route 3 to obtain your PE or IR. At the moment, we don't specify any deadline, okay, on the conversion, but we highly encourage staff who has obtained chartered to do their conversion to PE, because we try to have our own local PE as much as possible. So that is what I can think of lah. Okay,
Mr. Chair,
maybe some other can
Mr.
add.
Chair,
Yes.
my intervention is based on the experience I have in mentoring some university lecturers who, by way of having obtained their CN status, which definitely qualify as recognized professional engineer under our EAC, but to be converted to a BEM registered PN, they need that minimum 12 months or 1 year attachment. And that one is difficult for many lecturers. They may not get the permission of the employer, the IHL, or if they have had industrial experience by way of research or consultancy, sometimes the board is too stringent in screening them off. So that's an issue of what is the industrial experience of the lecturer. Is it strictly a 12-month attachment where the employer got to pay him salary to do somebody else's work? Or if he has done consultancy or research, which some of us deem to be industrial-centric, but the Board of Engineers, so-called E&Q, may not find it so. So there's always this conflict of what is industrial experience. And I really hope that the board, of course it's outside the portfolio of today's discussion, that E&Q should be a little bit more sympathetic to those who are in academic line. To get 1 year attachment, frankly, is very difficult for some, especially private IHL. Public, maybe they can have the budget. But why can't we really accept their experience in their research or in their consultancy, which accumulated over time? So I think there's a need of flexibility on the board E&Q side. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. Thanks. Okay, I've got a few more questions that I'm going to put towards the panel. One of the questions that there's a few of them have asked the same question is basically, my department is expecting accreditation visit in March 2020. However, it was postponed due to the movement control order. Would we expect the visit in 2021? Should we follow the 2017 manual or the 2020 manual? There's a couple of questions on this. Should we follow the 2017 manual or 2020 manual for such a case? Can the panel shed some light on this?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Raj. Maybe let me answer. As what our chairman mentioned just now, Dato' Wira Sidit mentioned that the new standard 2020 take effects on the 1st of May. So therefore, any submission of SAR or any panel visit happen after 1st of May, we should follow the standard 2020. And Prof. Raj, have I answered the question?
Yes, you have. I think it's just basically which.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
In yesterday's ETAC webinar, a similar question was asked. If I had, I mean, this is a slightly different scenario. if I had obtained 6 years since this year, if that means to say a visit will be 6 years later or 5 years later, do I need in the interim to follow the new so-called new standard? So the Prof. Hassan, who was then chairing the chairman of the council, interjected by saying that based on the feedback of WA panel visitors years back, it has been recommended, or they have commented, that whenever we have the latest standard, which is an improved, is part of CQI, it is always encouraged that the IHL, even though they have remaining years of the last accreditation, they should really follow and migrate to the new standard. And frankly, it's for the better everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
indeed, IR Rocky. In fact, we have actually various types of accreditation. For instance, new cycle, we expect the SAR to follow the new standard. For continuing panel visit, then what we expect is that the IHL prepare gap analysis. They can submit the previous SAR plus the gap analysis to show or to demonstrate that the program is now complying with the new standard.
No, my point was, if you were giving 6 years in the accreditation before the new standard came in, frankly, you only need to wait for 6 years later down the road to convert. This is the issue. We are saying that even if you had 6 years accreditation and you are still current, it is encouraged that the IHL with that sort of accreditation should attempt to adhere, to migrate to the new standard. While there is no so-called force of the law, but definitely there's always the force of their being in line with the better standard.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Raj.
Yes.
Prof. Raj. Okay. Okay, that question by the institution, it actually depends whether they have submitted the SAR or they're in preparation. Yeah. So the if they submitted the SAR, they can also they can add the an attachment to that addendum. The same that if they have almost completed the SAR, try to address the requirement in stipulated in the 2020, because when I look at the guideline of the SAR, it's actually much simpler. I think it's supposed to be almost the same. All right. So I think with regards to the visit is that I think the there are some discussion at the council level for this year, for program that due this year for accreditation. They will be awarded extension of 1 year, and only new program we will do the physical visit subject to the strict SOP. So for those new cycle, the extension of 1 year will be given until 2021. Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, the continuing, continuing as well. Yeah, the continuing accreditation same. We will only do the desktop, except those in the area of safety where the visit is required. Yeah. So the panel can decide whether it's just a video or physical visit. Yeah. Continuing visit, we don't actually visit only desktop, except those concerning safety. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, IR Liu. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I'm going to put forward another 2 more questions to the panel. Okay, I think we're coming towards the end of the webinar. Okay, there's a very straightforward question here from one of the participants. What is the minimum number of IAP should be appointed? I think this is a simple question, but a lot of IHL, they tend to get confused with this. All right. Any of the panel members would like to answer this question?
Maybe let me try to answer this question. I think that the keyword should be sufficient. It actually depends on, when you call for the meeting, how many can make it. So if you only have 2, and when you call for the meeting, only 1 can make it, then you are actually having one-to-one discussion with your IAP. So we are actually coining this term as IAP. P stands for panel. So you should have a good number, so that whenever you want to call for IAP meeting, you will have 2 or more IAP members who can make it and then give you good feedback so that you can improve on your program. So the number depends on the HL. You actually the key is actually the effective effective IAP meeting, which give you input that is that benefits your program.
May I interject, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Rocky.
I'm a member of a number of IAPs, and I've noted my fellow members of the IAPs in some IHL are very passionate in trying to give back to profession. In fact, I'm really surprised why IHL are not making use of the IAP members who are very ever willing, even without mileage or whatever other allowance, to come and give talk on the industrial practices, arrange for factory visit, or give whatever talk that the student will benefit in future. It is, frankly, I have always been dumbfounded by why the IHL is so grudgingly, stingy in the nomination of IAP members. But of course, eventually we found out that some of them, they have to pay per TM or whatever. But many of us, frankly, do not look forward to that. We are very willing to give up what is in our mind and perhaps help us also keep young and keep on thinking. So do make use of that, and especially when you have so much emphasis on work-based learning. Who can help you plan work-based learning, frankly, in a cocoon of a very pure IHL without industrial participants? So frankly, make use of members of the industry as your members of the IAP, and definitely you should have more than one. And I noticed some universities have 3 or more. Yeah. And if you remember, 3 or more doesn't mean all of them will come, because they're rather busy. But at any one of the 1 or 2 meetings you may have in a year, at least you have 2 minimum to be present. So that answers the question of don't be too stingy with nominating IAP members. They really appreciate your appointment. They are very willing to impart knowledge and experience to your students. They can do a lot of things which, frankly, your IHL will benefit from that. Thank you.
Prof. Rajkumar, Dr. CJ here. Can I interject
please,
on the subject on IAP? I've been frequently commenting at many of the accreditations or the decision-making meeting when it comes to the role of IAP with the IHL. If I'm not mistaken, EAC and directors are asked to redefine the role of IAP panel and to ensure that the IHL see the effectiveness and the role played by IAP members. And this is where it reflects, it follows what Rocky Walk has mentioned just now, and also mentioned by Dr. Liu and also Prof. Lau, that in order for you to have an IAP, it's not a matter of fulfilling what is the condition required under the manual or standard. It is really to see how effective can IAP assist you in enhancing your program. And to have an effective IAP panel, what has been deliberated at the meeting, if I'm not mistaken, we indicated preferably a minimum of 3. Of course, this answers what Liu said just now. If any one of them drop, you cannot have a panel with one person attending the meeting. And for that reason, you need to have as many, particularly those who are located in area where there are many industries. And they are, as Rocky says, ever willing to participate even if you don't have to give them even appearance or meeting allowances. And I hope IHL in future will not be reluctant to set up effective IAP where it involves as many of the industries player within your region, within your area. And they can also be developed to become even invited speakers or even lecturers for some of your program. So we would like to see in this coming period that IHL take advantage on setting up a more effective IAP panel. Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Datuk Sidek. Okay, I think we have come to the end of the webinar. There's a lot of questions on the COVID-19 pandemic and how we should implement industrial training and so on. I would suggest the IHLs to actually read the guideline that has been issued by the Engineering Accreditation Council and the Board of Engineers Malaysia. That should actually provide you the direction in which you should go. Okay, so thank you everyone for participating in the today's webinar. Okay, thank you to Datuk Sidek. Thank you to the panel members. As you can see in your Zoom, you have a reaction panel there. You could click on it and give a thumbs up or a clap to all the panel members. And also thanks to IR Rocky Wong, who has been instrumental in answering some of the questions. Thank you very much to you. Thank you very much to the Secretariat for organizing this webinar. Okay. Thank you everyone, and we hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prof. Raj.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.